Welcome to episode 40.
Altars.
Are altars a part of your life? Do you create sacred spaces for ritual or for your own personal energetic work?
Have you experienced altars in your life in ways that maybe are sterile, are symbolic, but not meaningful to you?
Please join us as we explore the ways in which we create sacred space, we personalize our spaces, and sometimes how we hide our spaces. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
So, episode 40, altars. But before we start talking about altars and the ways in which they are a part of our lives, why don't we talk a little bit about what's been going on since the last time we got together?
Sounds great.
You want to get us started?
I would. So something I've been thinking a lot about is saying no. Boundaries. And I wanted to bring this up to you because you really inspire me. And I'm going to speak not for you, but of my experience of you.
Okay.
So I really invite you to jump in. But what I have seen you do is be really kind but firm with your boundaries and saying no.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I see it a lot in scheduling of like holding days, like this day is good for me. This day is not good for me. Well, are you sure that day is not good for you? No, that day is not good for me. How about this day? You know, like I see it in like scheduling. I see it in ritual roles. I see it in just you and me working on the podcast. And then because of us hanging out, I see it in like friend stuff too. And it's really inspiring. And so I know as I move into reintegrating into the world in this like not post-pandemic, but post-surge of pandemic, life returning, you know, because I don't think that it's after the pandemic, but as we move in to this next phase, I'm noticing that people are starting to want to do things again, and so I don't have as few things to do, which makes scheduling things much easier. And so I'm noticing that I need, for my own self-care, to say no to things, either because I don't want to do them or because like it just doesn't work for like taking care of myself and the amount of time I have. And it's just so freaking hard to say no. Even if I want to say no, and even if it's reasonable for me to say no, it's just so hard to say no. And I don't understand why some people are so good for asking for things, even if it's totally unreasonable. And yet I am so bad at saying no, even if it is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
and how can I get me a piece of that, of the other person, right? Because there are these people are just so okay with asking for all of these things, reasonable and unreasonable. And I'm just like, wow, I want, like, dang.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like a muscle, right? So start asking for things, even if you don't really want them.
That is really weird sounding. I'm not
It's
gonna
really
lie.
weird. Yeah, I know.
Like my brain is like, huh?
But so I think I mentioned to you that a while ago I did a workshop. I did a workshop with someone, and my homework was this was 4 or 5, more than that, 6 years ago now. For the month of April, I had to say no to everything, even if I could do it and wanted to do it, because the instructor said, that it's a muscle. Saying no is a muscle, and the more you use it, the better it. The stronger it became, and the easier it is to use it. And so I did that, and it was so empowering. I didn't do it just for April, but I did it for May, right? So I'm going to suggest that you consider the possibility of strengthening your yes muscle, your muscle for what you want. And so it starts out, just start out by asking for things, even, pass the salt, even when the salt is right next to you, or, you know what I mean? Or if the other person has to stretch to do it, so you're actually asking them to really, really do something.
That sounds horrible.
I know it sounds horrible because that's not your psychological makeup.
That is not. Like, I would just rather do it myself, even if it's way harder and more time consuming.
And so that muscle just stays flabby and unused.
I gotta hit the gym.
That's right. You can start by asking me for something. Ask me for something. Ask me for something.
Can I have the red?
Oh, the red drink? Yes, you can. So as soon as we take a break, I'm going to make you a red drink. Yay! See how easy that is? Well, that's super easy because I would probably have done that anyway.
Well, sometimes you bring me tea.
Yeah. Okay, that's true.
I do love the red drink.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm so glad.
All right. Well, thank you for helping me work that muscle.
Sure.
I am going to need some time to process this idea of asking for things. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. I just need some time.
Yeah, you might need to process. You might need to journal.
I do.
And yeah.
Just doing this live on air, I just need more time. So we would either need to pause it and let me think for, 3 days, or I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll do some therapy around this where for free. You don't have to pay me like you pay your therapist. Where I give you an assignment like every few days, and then you have to check in and accountability and say, tell me what you asked for.
Sounds
like keep like instead of a gratitude journal, you can keep an ask journal.
Oh.
Take a deep breath.
Okay. While we think about that, how would you like to check in?
So, okay, my check-in is going to be about cookbooks. Cookbooks and recipes. So I have a lot of cookbooks, and I love browsing my cookbooks. I don't use them as much anymore because it's so much easier to just go online and type in what you think you might want to make and look stuff up. But I love to cook. And I have tons of recipes that I've downloaded from the internet or, ripped out of a magazine. And so a dear friend of mine is kind of in the same situation. So this is the second time we did it, but this Sunday she came over with her shopping bag filled with binders and recipes, and I had some as well, and I had a hole punch and paper cutters and extra paper in case we needed to tape cards, recipe cards and stuff on paper. And we just sat down and we went through our recipes and started figuring out. First of all, you have tons more than you ever use.
Yeah.
So the ones that you think you might actually use, as opposed to throwing some out. And we just went through, and we have binders that we're going to be putting our recipes in. I actually took the time to put in labels, dividers. So like there's breads and appetizers and beverages, and we're going through, and it just feels so good for someone who spends most of my time kind of careening from crisis to crisis. Like, I've got to make this, so let me print out something. It's so nice to know that I'm moving towards having an organized collection of my favorite recipes, things that I use over and over again, some of which I actually have 7 or 8 copies of.
Oh my gosh.
Because instead of trying to find it in the mass of the pile of recipes, I just print out another, right? So we spent a wonderful morning. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but as we get into our episode, but I got out the china, and we had tea, coffee, and little Danish and things like that. So it was very civilized, and we got a lot of work done, and we chit chatted, and so it was lovely.
Oh, that sounds so fun!
It was really wonderful.
Plus, I can get behind any gathering that involves organization. That to me sounds great.
I knew that would get to you. I knew that you'd appreciate that. So it's just a little bit of me. I want to be an organized person. I am not. And so in my work life, I create all of these structures to keep me on top of things. And I don't in my home life that much. So this is a movement towards that.
I love it.
Thank you. So episode 40 Altars.
I'm so excited for this discussion for a number of reasons, but the big one is that I think you and I are both really big fans of altars, and it shows up totally differently in our homes and in our rituals.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Yes. I forgot. Oh, yeah, rituals.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
Yeah. So, would you like to talk a little bit about, I don't know, where would you like to start?
Maybe let's start outside in and start with like altars in popular culture, or in the world around us, not necessarily in the witchy realm or our personal realms.
Okay, gotcha. So for me, I think, when I first think about altars, I think about growing up in the church, in the Christian church. And so there's really there's tons of different versions, but two that I have the most experience with. And so one is my Baptist upbringing, where the altar was it was not, I don't want to know how to put this. The church was very much people focused. And so I'm just going to let everyone know my dog is in the room. And he doesn't want to go outside. He wants to be with mommy because he's been away. I've been out all day. And so you might hear some snuffling. It's not us. It's the dog. Really, I promise.
Maybe I'm going to sit over here and like and like make noises and be like, no, that was Snow.
That was the dog. Yeah, right. So anyway, so in the Baptist church, there is no real altar because so the definition of an altar is just basically a space which holds magical items, right? And so it's very people driven, so there wasn't any altar. So I didn't have a sense of it until later I became a part of the Episcopal Church. And the idea of the altar is much different in that the things that are on it were considered sacred. And so it was very mystical and ritually oriented as opposed to the Baptist Church. I think that's the way I want to put it. And so in the Episcopal Church, in the High Episcopal Church, there's, more Protestant type of Episcopal churches. When you pass the altar, you stop and you either not bow your head, or in some places you actually genuflect. And so, and then at certain times of the church year, you literally like genuflect. In some cases, you go prostrate. Right. So,
I don't know what genuflect or prostrate means,
genuflect,
but it sounds naughty.
Oh, I wish. No, genuflect is
Are you
bend
allowed
the knee.
to genuflect in public?
Yes, you.
I only genuflect behind closed doors.
Amongst friends.
Amongst friends.
Friends don't let friends genuflect out in public.
Prostrate. You have to get your prostrate checked.
Well, no. So genuflect just means you bend the knee.
Like a curtsy?
Like a curtsy. I guess,
okay.
Curtsy. Mm-hmm.
Well, curtsy sounds way less.
But that's not religious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you curtsy to the queen. You don't curtsy to God.
Oh.
Yeah, so, or God's altar, which holds his holy stuff. His hairbrush.
Which holds his holy stuff.
Oh, okay. If back in the day, I think
have a drawer, like kitchen stuff, holy stuff.
Wow. Okay, so I have a funny story to tell you about. So this was an Episcopal priest told me this like almost 40 years ago. He was doing a service at the Episcopal cathedral in Jerusalem. And he had a body mic on, and you sense the altar. Mm-hmm. So you have a thing of incense that you swing, and the air, the smoke that comes out of it is supposed to be purifying the area. And so he has his body mic on, and he's incensing, and the bottom of the censer catches the top of the altar, and all of the little pellets spill out on the altar. And so all you hear him say is shit. So he literally defiled the altar with all this stuff like cascading across it, and then he said words that were probably not the most appropriate.
But maybe he said it directly into the cloud of incense, so it's instantly purified. So if you're gonna cuss, just cuss into a cloud of incense
over an altar in Jerusalem. Oh. Yeah. So two different ways of thinking about thinking about the purpose and the value of the altar, right? Mm-hmm. So what about with you?
So I grew up, and I infrequently, but over a long period of time, consistently went to Methodist churches, but very infrequently. So maybe like I don't know, maybe once a month, maybe a couple times a year. So I don't have a lot of experience with altars, but I do remember like the golden metal crosses being on the altar.
Yes.
And then maybe some candles. But everything was pretty like generic looking. You know, like we'll talk about our altars, which I feel like are very festive or like
impersonal.
Yeah, very personal. This was just things were symbolic, and I know that they had meaning, but like they just were very symbolic, you know. But I do remember the cloths changing. You know, like I would come in, there would be like purple, or they would have like different symbols, or like leaves on them, or I like leaves, so like things like that. But I didn't go enough to know what it meant. I just noticed the colors, but I didn't know what it meant. Like now looking back on it, I know what it was, you know. But I think I liked that the colors changed, and I knew that signified the movement of time, but I didn't really know much more than that. So I really entered into my practice as a witch from almost a blank slate, having very little to no experience with altars.
A tabula rasa.
Yes.
A clear table.
Yes.
A clear altar.
A clear altar, which maybe is part of the reason why I like altars the way I like them. But we'll talk more about that.
So, so one of the things, you know, we're talking about, other ways of thinking about altars, or original, not original, but, you know, ways that we knew altars before we started practicing. One of the things that that I think we're talking about altars in churches, but those are not the only versions of altars that we see out there. Like in popular culture, there's always a horror film where there's going to be this sacrifice, you know, and it's usually a person, and you know, the hero or the heroine, whoever has to come in and save them. And so this idea of, we have these kind of positive, I think whether it's positive or negative, the altar itself is this holder of something. And then depending on who the people are, that's the projection on the altar. But it's this scary place in when it's viewed in a negative way, where it's, I don't know, usually it's some sort of Satan worship or something like that, you know, the dark power. And it's, but when you think about it, often it is just like you said, this blank space to which we give meaning, right? It's just this thing. And depending on the cloths that are on it, or the gold, or this, that, and the other, that's what makes it the altar, right? And it's also a psychological space, which we'll talk about too.
I also see in popular culture, and this is not like what it's meant to be, but sometimes when I'm walking around and I see like store displays, I'm like, this is like an altar to Easter.
Yes.
You know, consumerism, Easter consumerism, you know, when I see like things stacked up and like all the items that they have there, I'm like, dang. Or store display windows, like when I'm walking by like at an outdoor strip mall sort of thing, you know, and I'm like, this is like spring worship right here.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And so like, for me, I kind of see it in these commercial places. And really, I'm not bringing like sacrilegious energy to it, but it's just more like when I see it in these commercial capitalistic places, and I think about like because what is an altar to me is, it's like I'm putting forward energy of what I'm wanting to work with. And so then when I see it in a Walmart or in a mall shopping center, you know, or even like in commercials or things like that, it's just like a video energetic altar, kind of.
It's interesting that you say that, because I don't think we were going to go in this direction, but I'd like to just posit the idea that so you were talking about the altars in the Methodist church, or the churches that you went into, and I'm wondering if a way of thinking about this is, who is the altar for? Is the altar for the person who created it, or is the altar meant to be seen? Like, is it the altar that the person created if no one sees it? Or is it meant to be like even an altar in a church, or an altar that's in someone's store, that, you know, is it something that has its value because it's being seen, or is there some sort of intrinsic or inherent value to the altar if no one sees it?
If an altar falls in the woods, does it?
If an altar exists in the wood and no one sees it, is it an altar?
Is it an altar?
But you see what I'm saying? So,
I do.
Because one of the things that we'll be talking about is why we create altars, and talking, and I'm going to talk a little bit about public and private altars, right? So, wow. So, yeah. I mean, there's that visual, there's that idea of, well, let's go here. Let's go there.
Okay, let's go.
So, yeah. So, there is this magical aspect of the altar where you're putting things there to create some sort of maybe a spell, or maybe a magical atmosphere, or it's a reflection of my feelings, or, my mood, or where I am that day, or I'm invoking, it can be a lot of different things. So it'll have a function. When it's coming from, well, I'm sure it always has a function, but it'll have a specific function, even if the function is, these are pretty things that I want to look at, right? And so another way of thinking about that, if it's a public altar, am I telling people something about myself? Right? Is it there so you can know? I mean, and not in a shallow way, or like I'm showing stuff off, but am I putting it there so you can see how I feel about spring, for example?
Sure.
I don't know. It's something to think about.
That's a really great. I like that you bring that up.
Because when I think about our altars for ritual, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, but when I think about our altars for ritual, in many cases we're creating a magical space, and in some cases, the items on that space are going to be a part of the working, or at least reflecting the working in some sort of way. So without the altar, there might be a space or a hole in the intent, in the energy, right?
And I've experienced that. One of my first rituals that I priestessed for our circle after I finished my apprenticeship. It was a ritual about the moon festival.
Oh,
and we had lanterns around. It was really beautiful. But I did not create an altar in the middle. And I remember towards the end of the working, I was priestessing, and we were singing, and I remember we were all standing around in a circle singing, doing the magical working that we had just worked with in the center of the ritual. And I remember thinking the energy had nowhere to go.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And there was nothing in the center of the circle, and I remember thinking oh crap. I mean, it was fine. It was great. But I remember thinking, if we had an altar with images, so this was for the moon festival, with an altar with the image of a moon on it or something.
Yes.
Or we could see the moon, but because of the time and where the building was, we couldn't see the moon. So I just found myself not knowing where to look. And I'm a pretty visual person. So I didn't have anywhere to look, and neither did the other women.
A focus.
Yeah, we didn't have anything to focus on. So that was a really big learning thing for me, and that not only does the altar have symbolic value, but it always comes back to energy for me. But it plays a part in the focus and the energy raising and holding the energy and the magic, because that's where we direct things to.
Exactly.
And okay, so that's my angle.
Yes.
That's my angle on altars. It's it's about energy, because if we make it about energy, it's important to me.
Yeah. And when I think back on it, a lot of even the things that I mentioned earlier is about energy, right? I mean, is it energy from me into the altar, coming back, reinforced by the altar? Is it me just taking something from me and taking it out of myself and putting it on the altar so that I'm safe from it? You know what I mean? But it's energetic. Or am I getting something from the altar, right? And in the case of those public altars that you were saying that might be in store windows, the energy, I mean, is the energy come in and see our stuff, or see what a fabulous store, or what fabulous stuff we have. You know what I mean? That's energy too, right?
That makes sense.
Wow. Deep. Damn.
Deep capitalistic altars.
Now we know the power of those altars. So now you'll think twice. And there's some places, I mean, I don't know how much they do now here because I don't really shop that much, but I just remember when I lived in Rome, going past some of those windows, because they know about their spiritual energy. They may not know how they know, but I remember some of those store windows. I would just literally just stand there and just look at them and kind of deconstruct because they were so gorgeous. And it would be a fabric store, really strange and maybe not really magical items, but they were very artistically arranged, and I'm convinced that there was some sort of energetic component to it.
Yeah, I wonder if people, because there are people that seem to somehow do it, and that's like what I was trying to get to before, but I don't think I said it very well, which is like sometimes displays are just displays, and other times I see them and I'm like, as a witch, I'm like, something is going on here. Whether or not I agree with what they're displaying, or I'm into what they're displaying, or it's sacred or mundane, but there is something about it, and I wonder if sometimes people tap into it without knowing.
Yeah, I see. There's a lot of intentionality in particular seasonal displays, because they're thinking about it so much that I think that they're putting some energy in there, whether it's positive or negative, or any sort of energy. But like I always think of the Macy's windows in New York City, you know, and just they to me in many cases they kind of sum up the holiday in the city, the Christmas holiday in the city, and it's just it's magical, and it's because of that energy, and I have to think back on that when I next go.
MAC, the makeup store, I always love their windows displays.
Yeah.
It's a makeup store. I don't buy makeup, but for whatever reason, I'm just like, dang.
That's and I'm convinced now. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. That it's the energy. Now I'm going to pay a little bit more attention. The few times I go to the mall, I'll pay attention to what's drawing me. Yeah, that's amazing. So we were talking about public and private altars. Can I talk a little bit about my altars?
Yeah, yes. It's something that I think of whenever I think of you.
So I have 3 altars that I kind of maintain in the house, right? I have one in my living room. That's my public altar, and that's usually not the most personal. It's usually seasonally oriented. Like when I have my Samhain, I'll do a Samhain altar out there and have like relatives' pictures. It's not quite Dia de los Muertos because I'm not Hispanic and all that kind of stuff, but it's along the same lines. An ancestors altar, and now I have like spring, well, not real flowers, but fake silk flowers, and for spring. And then here in this, we're in my craft room. This is where we record. This is my semi-public altar because people come into my craft room, and I think a dog is laying on it right now. But but that's more. I think it's kind of naturey, and it's just things that make me feel good. Sometimes I play around with it because I want it to evoke a sense of creativity. Because it's a craft room, and often it's just like, oh, this is a pretty rock, so let's put that on there. Or I think, do I have the? I have some pictures and stuff.
I see a couple of rocks on there.
Yes, there's some. Oh yeah, you'll see some rocks and stuff like that. So that's my semi-public altar, and then I have a private altar, and I can tell you what it is, but no one will. Actually, you might have seen pictures of it. And this year I'm devoted to Oshun. So I have a statue of Oshun, and I have this kind of it looks like a river altar. It's a box that has greenery and stuff and little river rocks in front of it, and then I have necklaces because she's into gold and jewelry and pretty stuff, and a mirror and things like that. And so that's my private altar that no one sees because it's in my bedroom. Well, if I had a sex life, maybe somebody would see it, but right now I don't. So, not to overshare. But anyway, yeah. So that's my private altar.
But you also have the other altars.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of altars. One of the churches that I used to, it was an interdenominational worship space, and they would have an altar show every year. And I would buy, I'd buy an altar or two every couple of years. If there were altars that it didn't look like people were buying, because they do it as a silent auction, I would just like take a few of them, and some of them I'd keep, and some of them I don't. And I put a lot of them in my bathroom, and then I also take them say the ritual if they're appropriate for the ritual that we're going to do. So yeah, I have lots of little altars, and those are less about the divinity of the space and more about the energetic aspect of whatever to me is embodied by that altar. Mm-hmm. By those little altars.
I enjoy your altars.
Thank you.
And I have to say, like, it helps me when we're sitting in your craft room and I see your altar and I see it change. It helps me. It reminds me that we're in sacred space. And it also, which is something that I really like. I like being in sacred space, and I also like the marking of time. And those are two things that I see a lot with people who maintain altars. So that's something I really appreciate about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And you can see, I have 2 or 3 of them somewhere, but you can see one there. I have a travel altar. And so when I'm going to be somewhere for anything more than 4 or 5 days, sometimes I just take a bunch of crystals and a tarot deck and spread that out just to kind of create an altar effect. But I think we actually did that at a retreat. We made those little travel altars. It's a cigar box, and we've decorated it, and then I have like little things inside, so I can just take that and set that up where I am and have like a little mini altar. So yeah, I and sometimes sometimes I do something like that extensive, and sometimes I just take a candle or whatever. But I like to have, if I'm going to be anywhere for more than a couple of days, I like to have like a little altar adjacent type of space in there.
Has TSA ever looked at your stuff?
Oh, I carry if they're looking at stuff, they're not looking at that. I carry other things that they're probably looking at. So it's to massage out my muscles.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a massager.
It's like you use it on like your jawbone,
like they
do in the commercials. Ooh.
Exactly. So yeah. Well, yeah. What about with you?
So that's why I'm so excited to talk with you about this, because I love altars. I do not have one.
I remember. Yes. Okay.
So no judgment here on you or me or anything in general. And like our aesthetic is just very different.
I know.
So like in my space, like I tend to have like a bookshelf with like one item.
I want to be you so much.
Like one item placed on the shelf, you know.
It's so zen.
Zen. I just like I like my space clean. I like my space clear. I do not like clutter. I recently went to a symposium on Monday and Tuesday, and like my coworkers who were with me were like picking up stuff at all the exhibitors tables, and they were asking me, they're like, "Why aren't you picking up anything?" I was like, "Because I don't want to deal with stuff." You know, like I
love you so much.
I just don't want to deal with, like, it'll be on their website, right? Like, so like maybe I get a card. More likely I just put their name directly into my phone. But I just don't want to deal with stuff.
Right.
I don't like stuff. So
so let me just set up where she's sitting right now. We're in my craft room where I think the floor space decreases each time you come, because I have stuff all around the perimeter.
There is a tiara over there, or necklace or something over there I haven't seen before.
Isn't that from your ritual?
Is that a necklace?
Did we? No, did we do something? Did we do shell necklaces? No, we did shell tiaras for you.
We did.
That's from.
That was the ocean retreat.
Yeah, but
the Yamaya at the ocean.
Yeah,
he had the shells.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's from a ritual or something, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, so she's surrounded by with boxes of stuff, bags of stuff, hundreds and millions and dozens of stuff. You know. So she gets her fill of stuff when she comes to my house.
And like this, it's fine because it's not my space.
It's not your space.
If it was my space,
oh, you'd be crazy.
It would drive me.
I
wouldn't sleep. Like I would stay up
and straight
and organize it.
Oh, can you come stay at my house for a week?
Get rid of things?
Come stay at my house for a week. This is a futon, so you're gonna.
But being in other people's spaces, and like, so for example, I really enjoy coming over here and seeing your altars, like the one in your living room, you know, and especially like in Samhain, whenever like I always look for your mom's picture, you know, and then like the one in here, I'm in here frequently enough because I'm over here basically weekly. Like I see it change with the season, so I really enjoy it. and I do not have one at home.
Because you can enjoy it here. It's
right.
It's like going to a movie theater, right? You can enjoy that. You don't have to have all that stuff in your house. Yeah.
Now, here is what I do with an altar, because it is not like a more like this type of altar. I have like a drawer where the doors open up, you know, in my chest of drawers in my bedroom. So it's like in the center of my chest of drawers, and it's not a drawer, but it's like a drawer space. But you open up 2 doors. It's the size of like I might not be able to fit my djembe in there, but like
okay.
It's like fairly large, but not super big, you know. I'm not sure what it's actually used for, but I have a tray that I have like altar materials on. So like my candles, marking the 4 directions, because I really like the 4 directions. I have rocks with like symbols that my sister made me for the 4 directions on there. Mostly the 4 directions.
I'm seeing a tendency.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I have like something that marks center.
Okay.
Not a goddess, but like just like center, the sacred. And that's like, I have like a candle for that. And then I have like a pentacle because of like the directionality meaning. And so then what I do is, if I am going to do a private ritual, or for a lot of the time when we were doing Zoom rituals, I open my drawer and then I pull out the tray, because I can't light the candles in there.
Gotcha.
And I pull out the tray, and then I have instant altar. And I may sometimes I like leave the tray right. I just pull it out. I sit right there. Other times, like I'll move the tray somewhere. But then ritual is over. I blow out the candles and I put the tray back and I close the doors.
And it's clean and spare and
yes.
Yeah.
So it's like the energy is still there. The sacredness is still there. I just don't want the clutter.
Right.
And I've talked to some people who are like, oh, like I'm witchy, but I live in, like I share a space with people that it's not safe, or at home, or like roommates. I don't want to be out. And my advice is always like drawer altar.
Drawer altar, exactly.
Drawer altar. Like have your altar in a drawer. You pull out the drawer. And then if you pull out a drawer, you can just light the candles and stuff in the drawer, maybe. So, and then you can just blow it out, let it cool down, and you put, so yeah. I am a full supporter of drawer altars.
I'll have to remember that, because so yeah, if I'm staying with someone who is not, well, that's okay, never mind. That's not going to happen.
I don't think it'll happen for you anymore.
Yeah, I'm way out. I'm too way out.
You're too far gone for that.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that idea though, and I think, and even if you're not trying to hide it, I mean, I don't think you're trying to hide it, but it's for people who are like you, who don't want a lot of clutter. It's just a wonderful way of having that sacred space, and it's easy in and easy out. You know, like you can open it; it's there. You don't have to worry about setting up and keeping things put away and stuff like that. So, beautiful.
I may also do altars on my mantle.
Oh, right, yeah.
Above my fireplace.
Yes.
So that's a place where I do altars, but the altars that I do out in that type of area are not like what I would do for a ritual altar. So when the pandemic started, I put a spoon on my altar, and you were one of the first, this is a side note, you were one of the first people that I ever saw bend a spoon. Holy moly. That just...
Yeah. It was,
blew my mind.
But then you jumped on that with both feet. I remember.
I did.
Yes, you did. Because I remember you and your sister, weren't you guys like...
We just bent spoons all the time. It was just like, some people after work go out for a drink. We were like, we literally would go to Goodwill and buy silverware. Yeah, because you never know when you were going to need to bend. Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh yeah, because it's like light as a feather, stiff as a board.
It really is.
It's magic.
Oh.
I mean, it's tangible magic. We know we're making magic. We know that we're doing.
Yeah.
But when you bend a spoon, it's like fucking A.
Yeah.
I bent a spoon
this
with
is
the
a
power
spoon.
of my mind.
I bent this spoon.
A silver spoon.
Oh my gosh.
And then you have the spoon on your altar. It's like
I do.
down.
Yes. Okay. So when the pandemic happened,
should we tell people what that means?
To bend spoons?
Yeah. Do you think?
Sure.
Okay. So spoons are made out of silver plate, stainless steel, or whatever, and generally they're kind of hard, and it's hard to move them. But if you focus, and we do a bunch of things to kind of get ourselves in the right mindset. You can literally like spaghetti coming out of the water. You can literally just take the spoon and just bend it into circles or hearts or whatever, with the power of your mind and our magical ability. So.
Yes, and I have sat through rituals where I try to bend the spoon refuses to bend.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
But when it happens, it just feels, to me, I feel so in tune with myself and in tune with my surroundings and in tune with nature.
Mm-hmm. And that is why when we did a ritual, one of our very first Zoom rituals, after we separated due to the pandemic, we were asked to bring an item that represented like power and safety and community and like all that stuff. And so I picked my spoon because of its connection with you and our rituals that we did with it and how I felt doing it and all the other jillion times that we then bent spoons after that, me and my sister, and we did it at like with her daughter, like my niece and all this stuff. So I like for a while I had like a candle and that spoon on my mantle as like an altar. But
Very
like
powerful.
but like it didn't look like an altar. It just looked like something like that. So I find that I like to hide my altars in plain sight like that. And then I also do something where I like to like write things. For example, like if I have a picture in my living room, I'll write something on the back side of the picture and then hang up the picture. Or before I paint my walls, I'll like write things on my walls and then I paint over it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's phenomenal. Yeah.
Or like if I have things in my classroom, because I'm a public school teacher, I can't just have like whatever out. I could. There would just be consequences.
There would be consequences, and we don't want to deal with that.
I just don't want to deal with it. So like sometimes I'll like write things and I'll put or symbols and I'll put things on top of that piece of paper, or I'll stick it to the back side of a picture frame. So I have these sacred things around. They just might not be visible. When they built my classroom, my classroom was just rebuilt a couple of years ago. I snuck in while they were doing construction, and I put crystals in the walls, and I put notes around the crystals, and I like put them in the walls.
Oh my gosh, that's phenomenal!
So like I know that they're in there,
Yes.
And then the construction workers don't care; they just like sealed up the walls.
What's this bump? Well, I don't care. Just keep going.
So they seal up the walls, but I know that they're in there.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So like I try to do like concealed. Hidden in plain sight altars.
Yeah, hidden in plain sight, and then just embedding the magic in a space. That's phenomenal. So your whole room is your altar.
That's the way that I kind of feel. Like my body, my room, my house, like my space, like everything is my altar.
My body is a living temple of love.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Good.
Could we talk about what do we like to use for altars, or how do we like to use our altars in ritual spaces? Okay,
so it's so funny. I don't think I have a tradition. We used to have. There are a couple of women that had been in our circle who made the most incredible, intricate altars. I remember one time. Remember, there was one where we had like soil from various places in Texas. I mean, it was like this huge. I mean, it was like, first of all, I think it was this constructed thing that had an arch that was maybe, I don't know, 7 feet high. And then the table part of the altar, about waist high, had soil from various places. Do you kind of remember this? And I'm just trying to remember, how did they get all that dirt in there?
I don't know.
that was my issue.
I don't know.
And then, and there were vines around it. So we had some people who made some really intricate, involved altars. That's not really my jam. I tend to have a few symbolic pieces, and because I've got to bring that stuff in, set it up, and then take it home, right? So, so one of the things that I think is what I like to do is think about what's the purpose of the ritual, and then kind of let my imagination, for a few weeks, just make associations that are not necessarily the traditional association, either with that goddess or with that concept or whatever. And so sometimes it might seem a little arcane to people who are like, why does she have that on there? But I think, again, it's the energy. It's more the energy of the idea. So what that would look like, candles, obviously, feathers, crystals, stones. Sometimes, like the last thing we did, it wasn't so much the altar itself, but we had divinatory tools and things like that. So I think for me, it's very much a sense of what feels right for what we're trying to do in that altar. Yeah.
I like to have altars so I either like to have one main altar, or I'm also really into elemental altars, like one in each direction. So I really jam out on that. I love having elemental altars for our rituals that we do. But I also like to have, even if we have 4 in the directions, I like to have one in the center, or just one in the center. But I like images of the sacred, like in whatever way we're working with her. I like that. Or
when you say images, do you mean like a sculpture, or you mean a painting, or photo, or picture?
I love I like you particularly have goddess statues that you bring sometimes, and so I really like that. Even though that isn't really where I go. If we are working with a goddess, me seeing a visual of her, especially if it's a sculpture or statue, like that helps. I also really like when we put all the magical tools that we'll be working with, even if we're working with crayons, or pieces of construction paper. Like, I like to have those on the altar. That helps me feel more sacred whenever I'm using like a crayon or a highlighter, or like sometimes we write letters, so even having a roll of stamps on there, it just makes it feel more sacred to me. I also really like colors on the altar. So seeing the colors of the 4 directions. And then I also like food on the altar. Like, so if we're going to eat or drink something, I just like whatever we're working with being there. And then one of my last big things is, I like having like a visual where I'm going to focus and send my energy, whether it be a bowl with like the pieces of paper we've written on, or a candle that we're burning, or just anything. I like seeing something that shows where we're directing that energy and how that energy is going to go.
Yeah. No, I get that. One of the things that came to me as you were talking. Wait. I'm trying to practice deep listening, so it's like okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know. One of the things that I love to do, I love to get the 7-day candles. So those are the pillar candles you can get at HEB for $1.47, and
because we live in South Texas.
Because we live in South Texas,
Don't sell those at Missouri.
No, that's true. Yeah, good point.
But it is a good point about living down here. That's really, really convenient and cheap.
That's right. And if you don't live here and you want to get it, we'll hook you up for a fee. Anyway, so I'll get those and I'll collage them. So it could be a goddess, but it could be, again, like where my mind is taking me in terms of associations with whatever we're going to be working with. And so I like to collage that candle, because then, you're burning it. It's absorbing the energy of whatever the picture is or whatever I've collaged on it. And then I can use it, like I use it that night, and then I can bring it home and then burn it every night until it's gone. Right. And it's a 7-day candle. That means burning nonstop 7 days, so you can last a month or so or more if you're burning it for a few hours every day. So I think that's wonderful. That's candles are really powerful energetic tools, and so I use them a lot on my altars.
I think you're bringing up something that is really true for me and reminds me of, I like whenever we have something on the altar during our group ritual, and then we take pieces of it home. Like either if we all have a candle on there, and we take that home, or we put something on the altar and then we take it home, or something that we wrote we take home, or whatever it is, a piece of fabric, like we've done that. But I like that, because for me it's like energetically I'm taking it home.
Yes.
And then I have that tie, sometimes literally a tie,
yes,
to that group energy. And then I tend to save all those things for a year. And then at the end of the year, if it's made out of burnable material, I burn it. And if it's not, I have a jar that I put it in, and then I bury the jar.
I love it. Was it your ritual where we had the leaves?
Yes.
Yes, I used that leaf to create, as a stencil, to create leaves on some of my journal pages. And then I wrote within the leaf.
Oh, cool.
And then I'll show it maybe. And then I've I keep saying I'm going to tape it on a page, but I keep using it. So maybe at the end I'll tape it to the last page of my journal. But yeah, stuff like that. I love things like that I can use not only for that ritual, but I can utilize for other things and carry the energy of that ritual into those other things. So I just think that that's so powerful. And even if it's like a little tchotchke, like I found, not a tchotchke, but but there's some things that, like, one of the things that's on my altar now is from the ritual that where I was gonna say I was white and you were black.
Let's add a little context around that.
where we were it was for the equinox, and I was the embodiment of light, and you were the embodiment of the dark.
Yes.
Yeah, and we were in balance. But anyway, at that ritual, we got two things. We got a little candle, or I got a candle, and then a little mirror. And so those are things where they're just little small things, but to me, it represents the energy of the equinox. And so that's on my little altar over there too.
And I burned the candle, and then the metal container the candle was in is now in my jar of non-burnables.
Gotcha.
And the mirror is in the jar with the non-burnables. Because I don't like a lot of stuff.
I know you don't want to sit around. Yeah, it's going to sit in there for a while, and then we'll figure out, it'll become a collage or something. Yeah. So yeah.
I do have to say, altars for me are one of the last things I think about for ritual. I've planned the ritual, or I'm on the ritual team. We've planned the ritual, and then we're getting ready for the logistics of what's going to happen. That's when I think about the altar. I do really love being with people who are altar minded, and like that's their thing, because I think that having a beautiful altar made intentionally can really change the energy of a ritual or the energy of a space. So I'm always grateful. I feel like I can bust out a good altar. I can for sure bust out a functional altar.
Yeah.
but the people that
the ones who create, these like portals to other worlds and all of these different things. Yeah.
Those can be really powerful.
So one of the things I wanted to mention, I thought about it for this episode, but it actually kind of alludes back to two previous episodes. One was on food magic, when we had the Witches Next Door, and Guion was talking about his book. And then the other was our episode on self-care. So about a week ago, it was for Easter. So I live by myself, and I have a lot of beautiful things, and sometimes I don't use the beautiful things for myself. I use it when people come, and for myself, it's like, I'll just grab this plate because I can throw it in the dishwasher, whereas my china has to be washed by hand, so it's just easier, more efficient, blah, blah, blah. And but for I have a friend, and we Zoom Easter dinner together, and so I actually set my dining room table, and I was putting out my china, and I felt like I was creating an altar to my food.
That.
And I was putting out the china, and I put out a really good wine glass and the teacup and the saucer, and I got my sugar dish out and my cream dish that goes with the china set, and the spoon that has that looks like the little shell for, all of that. And I was laying that out. And after a while, because I was doing it, originally I was just doing it one piece at a time because I'm clumsy and I don't want to break anything. But after a while, I just started doing everything really slowly, and I was creating an altar to the food. But what struck me about this was I started to well up, because it was part of self-care, because it was me indulging myself and treating myself to something that's really beautiful and really tasty, and I don't give sometimes I even set my timer so I don't spend too much time eating, so I can get to what I need to do. You know what I mean? This, where I don't give myself, I don't take care of myself, right? Or I don't take care of myself in a way it acknowledges the divinity of my body. And so this was one of those opportunities where I actually took the opportunity to have this moment, this real intentional moment of just setting up before even putting the food on the plates or eating or whatever. And it felt like I was setting up an altar to myself.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was one of those moments where we were talking about mystery blindness and not seeing the mystery around us, and I was really tapping into it, and I was going to say I really want to do that more often, and I do, but I really want to acknowledge that moment, that it was a beautiful moment when that happened for me.
Wow. Yeah. I do think that, like, especially whenever we have fancy family dinners for a holiday, the centerpieces are altars, you know?
Very much.
Well, maybe I shouldn't even just say the centerpieces. Like, the tables are altars complete with these centerpieces, which, when you think about it, are very clearly, like, altar paraphernalia, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's a big-ass turkey, but...
Right.
You know, they vary, right? But, yeah. So we were talking... we actually alluded to her a few weeks ago in our self-care episode to Setsuna, one of the women that we interviewed last year. And she always talks about, you know, when she's making her coffee in the morning, how mindful she is of it, and, you know, where did the water come from, and stirring her coffee and that sort of stuff. And I'm so envious of that awareness. And so for a little bit of time I had that awareness. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I am going to be like that more often.
And, like, whenever I pull out my lotions and things for my skin, like, what is that if not an altar of, like, self-love and self-care? I mean, it could be some other things, you know, but, like, whenever I look at it, I see it self-love, I see self-care, I see beauty, I see health, you know?
Yes.
Like, yes. And so, like, as I lay out and it's super witchy, like, when I lay out, like, all of my little jars of, and, like, different things that I'm going to use, like, that's what I see. So, like, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, maybe the altar doesn't have my directional candles and all that stuff. Maybe the altar is the lotion bottle, you know, and, like, the little bottles of things. And
that's such a good point, because that happened to me recently, where, like you say, you lay out all of those things, but you're taking it's being mindful and being aware, and that little space is going to be a space where you're going to use that to take care of yourself and to love yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an altar to you.
Yes. And if I'm really on my A game and I don't have the light on and I have my candle lit, you know, yeah. Then that's like bonus points.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we were talking, we actually alluded to her a few weeks ago in our self-care episode to Setsuna, one of the women that we interviewed last year. And she always talks about, you know, when she's making her coffee in the morning, how mindful she is of it, and, you know, where did the water come from, and stirring her coffee and that sort of stuff. And I'm so envious of that awareness. And so for a little bit of time I had that awareness. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I am going to be like that more often.
And, like, whenever I pull out my lotions and things for my skin, like, what is that if not an altar of, like, self-love and self-care? I mean, it could be some other things, you know, but, like, whenever I look at it, I see it self-love, I see self-care, I see beauty, I see health, you know?
Yes.
Like, yes. And so, like, as I lay out and it's super witchy, like, when I lay out, like, all of my little jars of, and, like, different things that I'm going to use, like, that's what I see. So, like, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, maybe the altar doesn't have my directional candles and all that stuff. Maybe the altar is the lotion bottle, you know, and, like, the little bottles of things. And
that's such a good point, because that happened to me recently, where, like you say, you lay out all of those things, but you're taking it's being mindful and being aware, and that little space is going to be a space where you're going to use that to take care of yourself and to love yourself, right? And so it's an altar to you.
Yes. And if I'm really on my A game and I don't have the light on and I have my candle lit, you know, yeah. Then that's like bonus points.
Yeah. Beautiful. We're going to read a poem by Denise Levertov, who is a British poet, an Americanized British poet, who wrote she was a prolific writer, and wrote a body of poetry that's still highly regarded. Born in the 1920s and died right before the turn of the new century.
And this poem comes from your book.
Oh, Earth Prayers. Yes.
I believe the earth exists, and in each minim mote of its dust, the holy glow of thy candle.
Thou unknown, I know. Thou spirit, giver, lover of making, of the wrought letter, wrought flower. iron, deed, dream.
Dust of the earth, help thou my unbelief. Drift gray beneath gold in the beam of vision. I believe with doubt. I believe and interrupt my doubt with belief. Be beloved, threatened world.
Each minim mote, not the poisonous luminescence forced out of its privacy, the sacred lock of its cell broken, no, the ordinary glow of common dust in ancient sunlight.
Be that I may believe. Amen. We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!